I remember that morning so clearly. My 60th birthday. The sunlight came through the curtains in soft golden stripes, and I could smell cinnamon from the cake my daughter baked the night before. Everything felt peaceful. The kind of peace you only earn after years of holding a family together. For 30 years, I believed my husband, Richard, was my safe place. He was quiet, respectful, and never the kind of man who raised his voice. We'd been through everything together. The loss of my father, our children leaving home, my little health scares. He always stood beside me, steady and calm. That morning, he told me he had a surprise planned. "Don't cook tonight," he said, his eyes soft behind his glasses. "I've already invited everyone for dinner." I smiled, thinking maybe he'd invited our kids, maybe even some of our old friends. Birthdays after 50 aren't about gifts. They're about the people who still choose to show up. I wore my favorite soft blue dress, the one he always said made me look younger. I put on light perfume and set the table with our good plates. Around 6, I heard a car pull up. Then another. I opened the door, expecting familiar faces. But what I saw stopped my breath halfway. Richard stepped out first, holding a bouquet. Behind him stood a woman in her late 30s, maybe 40, and 2 teenagers. The woman had eyes that looked exactly like my husband's. She smiled politely, as if she belonged there. I waited for him to introduce them, but he just looked at me, silent, his lips pressed tightly together. "Mary," he said softly. "This is Anna and her children, Ethan and Lily." I smiled automatically, trying to understand. "Oh," I said. "Friends of yours." He hesitated. The woman shifted awkwardly. The boy looked down. And then Richard said the words that split my world open. "They're my family too." My knees almost gave out, but somehow I stayed standing. The sound of laughter from the neighbors' kids echoed faintly outside, a strange contrast to the silence in my chest. He walked inside as if nothing was wrong, telling them to come in. I just stood there, a hostess in my own home, greeting strangers who shared my husband's blood. For a moment, I thought maybe it was some cruel joke. Maybe it was an old friend with kids he helped raise. But then I saw the woman's hand slip into his, and how naturally his fingers wrapped around hers. That's when I knew. 30 years of marriage. 30 years of loyalty, of love, of trust. And he'd been living a second life behind my back. I didn't cry right away. I just froze. Like a photo on a wall, smiling while the world around it fades. He tried to talk to me later, after they sat down in my dining room. My table, my chairs, my home. I heard him laugh, pretending like it was just another family gathering. I even heard that woman thank me for hosting. I walked into the kitchen, took a deep breath, and leaned against the counter. My wedding ring felt heavy, heavier than ever before. I kept looking at it, wondering what it really meant anymore. When I came back to the table, everyone looked uncomfortable. I sat down quietly. The birthday candles flickered in front of me. 30 years of memories swirled inside my head. Vacations, anniversaries, the night he proposed under a willow tree. Richard finally said, "I wanted you to meet them, Mary." It's time the truth came out. I stared at him, my voice barely a whisper. "The truth." He nodded. "I made mistakes, but they deserve a chance to be part of my life." The boy looked nervous, the girl picked at her nails, the woman avoided my eyes. I smiled faintly and said, "You thought tonight, my birthday, was the right time for this?" He didn't answer. I blew out the candles without making a wish. Because wishes are for people who still believe in magic. I didn't anymore. When everyone left that night, I sat on the couch long after the lights went out. The house smelled like cake and betrayal. I watched the window reflections of my own face, and for the first time, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. That's how my new life began. Not with a celebration, but with the quiet breaking of a heart that had given everything. The dining room looked beautiful that night. Candles flickered softly, the good china was out, and my favorite peach roses filled the air with their gentle scent. I'd spent the entire day cooking, roast chicken, mashed potatoes with extra butter, and my famous apple pie. 30 years of marriage deserved a celebration, didn't it? I thought we'd be talking about our memories, laughing over old photos, maybe even dancing a little in the living room like we used to. When David walked in, I remember smiling so wide my cheeks hurt. He looked handsome, Older, yes, but still with that calm, collected look that made me fall for him all those years ago. He was holding a bouquet, but not my favorite flowers. Lilies. I hate lilies. Something inside me twitched, but I brushed it off. Happy birthday, honey, he said, kissing my cheek. That's when I noticed there were footsteps behind him. I looked toward the door, expecting maybe my son, maybe a few old friends. But instead, a woman walked in. And not just any woman. She looked like she could have been me 30 years ago. Young, smiling nervously, holding a little girl's hand. My heart dropped so fast I could almost hear it hit the floor. May, David said, clearing his throat. This is Clara and my daughters Ava and Rose. For a moment, I thought I misheard him. Maybe he said co-workers or relatives, or some kind of charity visit. But then Clara smiled awkwardly and said, It's so nice to finally meet you. Finally? I could barely breathe. My hands trembled as I set down the serving spoon. The room felt too small, the air too heavy. Finally, I whispered, trying to hold my voice steady. David looked down, wouldn't meet my eyes. May, I've been meaning to tell you something for a long time. But I didn't know how. My voice cracked. Tell me what, David? Clara looked uncomfortable, glancing at the two girls who stared around my house like it was some kind of museum. We didn't want to ruin your birthday, she said softly. I laughed, a sharp, broken kind of laugh. Well, sweetheart, that ship has sailed. The girls sat at the table, and I watched David guide them to their seats, like this was just another family dinner. My family dinner. The one I'd spent hours preparing, now shared with the people who'd been living in the shadows of my marriage. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the food in his face, break every plate, every piece of glass that symbolized the life we built. But I didn't. I did what I always do, I smiled. So, I said, forcing calm. You have daughters. He nodded slowly. They're 10 and 8. 10 and 8. That meant he'd been lying to me for nearly a decade. Every anniversary, every trip, every morning coffee, he'd been living a double life. Clara reached out like she wanted to touch my hand, and I pulled back. Don't, I said quietly. The dinner that followed was the longest of my life. The girls giggled, innocent little things, not knowing the storm their father had just unleashed. Clara tried to keep the conversation light, asking about the house, complimenting the decor, saying she'd heard so much about me. I wanted to ask what she'd heard. Did he tell her I was the fool who ironed his shirts while he visited her? David ate quietly, occasionally glancing at me with those guilty eyes. I knew those eyes. They'd lied to me before. Halfway through dinner, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, grabbed my wine glass and said, Excuse me. I walked to the kitchen, shaking so bad the glass nearly slipped from my hand. In the reflection of the oven door, I saw myself, old, tired, humiliated. And yet, something inside me snapped awake. When I came back, I smiled again, that same sweet, calm smile that always made David think I was fine. I looked at Clara and said, So how long have you two been together? Her eyes darted to David. He stammered, May, please not tonight. Answer the question, I said firmly. She swallowed hard. About 12 years. 12 years. 12 years of lies, holidays, birthdays, anniversaries. All of it a show. The candlelight flickered on his face, and I realized I didn't recognize him anymore. Not the man who took care of me when I was sick, not the man who promised to grow old with me. That man was gone. I see, I said softly. And tonight you thought you'd what? Introduce your two families over mashed potatoes and pie. David sighed. May, I couldn't hide it any longer. You deserve to know the truth. The truth. I laughed again. David, the truth died the day you lied to me, and buried it with our marriage. The girls looked scared, so I softened my voice. You girls must be tired, I said kindly. There's a guest room upstairs. They smiled, relieved. Clara nodded in thanks. But as soon as they went up, I turned to David, my voice cold as ice. You think I'm just going to accept this? You think I'll share my life, my home, my everything? He said quietly. I just want peace, May. Peace. I whispered. You burned that bridge when you brought your sins to my table. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I blew out the candles one by one, leaving us in near darkness. I leaned close to him and said, You want peace? You'll have it. But not the kind you think. And then I walked away, calm, collected. But inside, my heart was on fire. Because in that moment, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't sleep that night. Not one wink. While David and his new little family slept under my roof, I sat in the living room, staring at the family photo hanging above the fireplace. 30 years of love, laughter, and lies, all framed in gold. The clock ticked loud, each second mocking me for every year I spent believing in a man who had another woman, another home, another life. I kept thinking about all the times I waited for him to come home late from work. The missed calls. The excuses. The perfume that wasn't mine. Oh, I noticed. I just didn't want to believe it. But now belief wasn't my problem. Revenge was. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. No, that would give him power. My mother always said, "A smart woman never screams, she smiles." So that's what I did. I smiled and planned. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. I walked into the kitchen. The same kitchen where I'd served his betrayal the night before. Clara was already there, pouring cereal for the girls. She looked nervous. "Good morning," I said cheerfully, like nothing was wrong. "Did you all sleep well?" "Oh, yes, thank you," she replied, her voice shaky. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down across from her. "You know," I said, "it's funny. David always said he hated sugar in his coffee. But last night I saw him take 2 spoonfuls. Funny how people change." She didn't answer. She just kept stirring that cereal, pretending to be calm. "Don't worry, dear," I added softly. "I'm not angry with you. You didn't make any vows to me." She looked up, confused. "You're not." I smiled again. That same quiet smile that always meant danger. "No." But he did. Just then, David came downstairs, looking tired and guilty. "May we need to talk," he said. I nodded. "Yes, we do. But not now. I'm having guests over tonight." He frowned. "Guests?" I nodded again, still smiling. "Oh, you'll see." That entire day, I played the role of a perfect hostess. I cooked, cleaned, and even bought new flowers, red roses this time, bold and defiant. David didn't know what to think. I could see the worry in his eyes. He thought I'd break down. Poor man didn't realize I'd already rebuilt myself. At 7 sharp, the doorbell rang. David opened it and froze. There stood our son, Michael. The one we'd raised together. The one David hadn't dared to tell the truth to. Michael's wife was with him, holding their baby. "Mom." "Dad," he said cheerfully. "You didn't tell me it was a big dinner tonight." I walked up behind David and said sweetly, "Oh, I thought it'd be nice for everyone to meet." "Everyone?" David turned pale. Clara stood frozen in the dining room doorway, clutching her children's hands. Michael looked between us, confused. "Mom? Who are they?" I walked over to him, took his hand gently and said, "Son, I'd like you to meet your father's other family." The room went dead silent. The only sound was the baby cooing softly. Michael blinked. "His what?" David tried to speak, but I cut him off. "Sit down, everyone. It's story time." For the next 20 minutes, I told everything. Every secret, every lie. I laid it out calmly, without shouting, without tears. I wanted the truth to sting the way his betrayal had stung me. Quietly, deeply, permanently. Michael's face went red. His hands shook as he stood up, glaring at his father. "You've got to be kidding me," he said, his voice trembling. "You had another family? For 10 years. David tried to reach him, but Michael stepped back. "Don't touch me," he snapped. Clara started crying quietly, the girls hiding behind her. "I told him to tell you," she whispered. "I told him you deserve to know." I placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Oh, I know you did, dear. But men like him only tell the truth when it benefits them." David's voice cracked. "May, please. I made a mistake." I turned to him, my smile fading. "No, David. You made a choice." And then I took something from my apron pocket, a small, folded piece of paper. "I already spoke to my lawyer this morning," I said softly. "The house, the savings, the car, they're all in my name now. You'll find your things packed in the garage. You and your second family can find somewhere else to live." He looked shocked. You can't do this." "Oh, I already did." Michael stepped forward. Good for you, Mom. I looked at my son, my heart breaking and healing all at once. I'm done being quiet, Michael. I spent 30 years being a good wife. Now I'll be something else free. Clara wiped her tears and whispered, I'm sorry, May. I never wanted this. I looked at her kindly. Don't apologize for falling for a liar. I did the same thing. David opened his mouth, but no words came out. He just stood there, a man stripped bare of his power, his secrets exposed. Happy birthday to me, I said softly, picking up a glass of wine. That night, after they left, I sat alone again in the flickering candlelight. The silence felt different now, not empty, but peaceful. The house, for the first time in years, was mine. Still, as I sipped my wine, I couldn't help but think of the years I'd lost. The time I'd spent loving someone who'd been half a man. But then I smiled. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't anger or shouting. It's reclaiming your peace, and making sure they know they can never take it from you again. I picked up my phone and typed one last message to David. Don't worry, dear. I forgive you. But I'll never forget that I finally saw who you really are. And that's the best gift you could have given me. Then I blocked his number, turned off the lights, and whispered to myself, May, you did it. And for the first time in 30 years, I slept soundly. 6 months had passed since the night I threw David out of my house. 6 months of peace, quiet, and rediscovery. I'd started gardening again, something I hadn't done since my 20s. My hands felt alive in the soil, like I was planting pieces of my soul back into the earth. I took long walks in the morning, sipped my tea on the porch, and even joined a local book club. People in town whispered, of course. Poor May, they'd say. Her husband ran off with another woman. But I didn't care anymore. Let them talk. I was finally living for me. Still, some nights, when the moon was full and the house was too quiet, I'd find myself looking at old photographs. The ones I hadn't yet brought myself to throw away. 30 years. That's a long time to erase. I didn't miss the man David had become. I missed the one I thought he was. But life has a funny way of testing you just when you think you've healed. It was a Friday morning when I heard the knock. Soft. Hesitant. Familiar. When I opened the door, my heart stopped. There he was. David. Only he wasn't the man I'd kicked out. His face was thinner, his hair grayer, and his eyes, those confident, lying eyes, now looked tired, lost. May, he said quietly. Can I come in? For a moment, I said nothing. The old me would have slammed the door. But the new me, she was curious. I stepped aside. You've got 5 minutes. He nodded and walked in slowly, glancing around the house like it was both familiar and foreign. It looks the same, he said. Still smells like cinnamon and roses. I crossed my arms. That's because peace smells sweet. He smiled faintly but didn't meet my eyes. I deserve that. I waited. He took a deep breath. Clara left, took the girls and moved back to her parents. She said she couldn't live with a man who lied about his past. I said nothing, just sipped my tea. I lost my job too. Word got out. People talk. I raised an eyebrow. About time you learned what it feels like. He sighed, rubbing his hands together nervously. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, May. I know I don't deserve it. I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Truly sorry. There it was. The apology. The thing I used to dream of hearing. And yet, now that it was here, it didn't feel satisfying. It just felt small. I looked at him and said softly, Sorry doesn't rebuild 30 years, David. It doesn't unbreak a heart. He nodded, tears forming in his eyes. I know, but I wanted to tell you something before I go. I frowned slightly. What is it? He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. My breath caught for a moment, not from romance but from confusion. He opened it slowly. Inside was my old wedding ring, the one he'd taken off the day he left. I kept it, he said. I couldn't throw it away. It reminded me of the only time I was truly happy. I looked at that ring, once a promise, now just a piece of metal. And for a moment, I saw flashes of our life. Our wedding day, Michael's birth, our first Christmas together. Then I looked back at the man in front of me. You came here to give me this? He shook his head. No. I came to tell you that I'm sick, May. The doctors say it's cancer. Late stage. The words hit like thunder. For a moment, all my anger, my righteous satisfaction, it just disappeared. He looked down, his voice trembling. I didn't want you to find out from someone else. I thought you should know. Silence filled the room. Only the ticking clock dared to speak. Finally, I whispered, "Why tell me now?" He looked up, tears streaming down his face. "Because you're the only person who ever really loved me. And I just wanted to say thank you." My throat tightened. For a moment, I saw not the man who betrayed me, but the one who held me when I cried, the one who danced with me barefoot in the kitchen, the one who dreamed with me before he destroyed everything. He turned to leave, but something in me stopped him. "David," I said softly. He turned around. "Sit down. Have some tea." He looked surprised. "You don't have to." "I'm not doing it for you," I interrupted. "I'm doing it for me. Because I don't want the last thing I ever give you to be hatred." He nodded, eyes full of quiet gratitude, and sat down. We didn't talk much after that. We just sat in silence, sipping tea, two ghosts of what used to be. When he finally left, he placed the ring on the table. "For old times," he said softly. I didn't cry until the door closed behind him. Weeks passed. Then one morning, a letter arrived in the mail. It was from David. He'd passed away, just 2 weeks after our last conversation. In the letter he'd written, "May, if I could go back, I would choose you every time. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope you live the rest of your life knowing you were the best part of mine." Along with the letter was a deed to the small lake cabin we used to visit when we were young. He'd left it to me. I drove there that weekend. The cabin looked the same, old, creaky, and full of memories. I sat on the porch, watching the sunset, holding the ring in one hand and the letter in the other. And I smiled. Not out of love, not out of loss, but out of peace. Because sometimes forgiveness isn't about them. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of what they did. I whispered to the wind, "Goodbye, David." The breeze carried his name away, and for the first time in decades, I truly let him go.